Coming to the conditional statements in programming languages, these are the set of statements that is meant to be executed only if under certain condition. Means if this condition is true, then execute this set of statements. Otherwise, don't execute this. So the syntax is this: if condition means if this turns out to be true, okay, then these set of statements under this block will be executed. So the statements that comes under this block, these are if statements. We say that these statements belong to the if block. And if this condition turns out to be true, means here it may be simply you can say if true. If you just give if true, then all these statements will be executed. And if you give if false, if false, then these statements will not be executed. This block will be skipped, and then whatever comes out of the if block, the execution of program will continue just as before. Means it will execute this statement and so on. Now the thing is, you might think that because the condition can be true or false, means that this condition means the whatever is there, means I have written here a condition, but what goes inside it must be a Boolean expression. But that's not the case. Actually, anything, if you give 0 here, if you give if 0, then this will be assumed as if false. Okay. Other than that, other than zero, if anything that you write here, it will be considered as a true. Okay, but mostly in our programming languages, mostly in our problems, what happens is that in this condition you have a Boolean expression only, and that will evaluate to true or false. But but the ruling is like that if you have anything other than 0, it will be considered as true. And if you have anything, if you have false, then it will not be executed. And if you have 0 here, or if an expression, any expression evaluates to be 0, okay, if you have 0 here, it will be treated as though you have false here. Okay, so that's what the if statement is. And this is your else clause, means sometimes with if you also have else attached to it. When you want to execute some statement, okay, if some condition becomes true, but you have another set of statements that is to be executed if your condition becomes false. For example, if the two numbers are even, you are adding it, and if the two numbers are, if any of the number is not even, then you are going to multiply the two number. Okay, so in your if condition, what you will have is you will check for the two numbers to be even. Okay, and if it turns out to be true, you will in this statement, you will perform x is equal to y plus z, something like that. But if this condition becomes false, means any one of the number is not even, so in the else statement, write the code to multiply the two numbers. So this was about if, and this was about if else. Now the thing is, what about nested if else? Nested if else. What is nested if else? You have if all else inside a if block. Okay, that is what a nested if else is. For example, if condition 1, okay, if condition 2. This is just one nested if blocks. Okay, means that you will get inside of this if block if condition 1 is true, and then you will execute these statements statements in this if block if condition 2 is true. So first you will get inside of this outer if only if this condition 1 turns out to be true, and then you will execute these statements only if this condition 2 turns out to be true. So you can say that you can achieve this is equivalent to this net. Instead of this nested if, what you could have done is if condition 1 and condition 2. Then in this you can write these statements also, both words. So nested if else, maybe for this if you have else part also. Okay. To avoid ambiguity in the nested if else, always use the braces. Okay, so as you can see, the if this is your if block and this is your if else block, the blocks are enclosed by braces, right? But if you don't give the brace, let's say if you write just if condition, okay, and then let's say it is statement 1, statement 2, and so on, then actually this is equivalent to if condition statement 1, statement 2, and so on. Okay, what I mean to say is this, that if there are no braces, only the immediate next statement is part of your if block. Okay, if else statement 1, statement 2, so on. Here in what is your else block part is only statement 1, statement 2, and so on. They are outside of your if else block. So this is what it is. If no braces is used in if or else section, only the next immediate statement is taken to be the part of your if section or else section. Now look at this. To avoid ambiguity in the nested if else, always use the braces. So what is this to avoid ambiguity? So when you have nested if else, there can be multiple if statements. For example, let's say if this is your if. Okay, let me do something. Let's say this is like, let's say this is some condition. Okay, and then again you have another if statement, and then you have, let's say, else here, and then you have another if statement, and then you have else, and again you have else. Now you may think that which else belong to which if, because this is your if only, but this is your if else. This is called if else block. This is called if else. If else means that else will always come with if. Else cannot come alone. You can have only if statement, but you cannot have only else statement. Else will always come with if. So this else, which else belong to this if? If you can see, you have three else, right? Here you have three else. Then which else belong to which if? Okay, if I ask you if C1, this is one of your if. If C1, okay, you have three else. It means each else has to belong to one if. So is this else belong to this if or this if? This else belong to this if or this if or this if? This else belong to this if or this if or this if? Okay, so let me say something, that In C programming, the else clause is always associated with the closest unmatched if. So this is your if else. Closest to this if is this if. Closest to this else is this if. This is your if else and this is your if else. Okay? So in the absence of braces, else pairs with the nearest unmatched. This else pairs with this else pairs with this else pairs with this. Okay, but it is better that you when you are writing your code, don't confuse yourself like this. You can do it simply if C1. Okay, the equivalent one. Let me first check if all of this is coming in frame or not. So it's better to write it like this: if C1, if C2, and then maybe whatever it is, then else, and then if C3, else. When you do this proper indentation, but proper bracing, the ambiguity does not remain. Now let's look at the switch statements. This is another conditional statement in C programming language. So this is your format of switch statements. You have many cases, okay, and these are the statements that you need to that will be executed if C1 matches with X. Okay, note here these are the break statements. We will see why we have break here. So let's say C1 matches with X, then these statements will be executed and then your control will come out of your switch statement. Similarly, if let's say C2 matches X, then these statements belonging to the case C2 will be executed and then because of the break it will come out of the switch statement. These C1, C2, so on, Cn, these are constants, okay, and unique constants means no two cases can have the same value. So these are constants and Ci is not equal to Cj. No two cases can have the same value of their constant in it. And this X will yield an integer, okay. So it can be anything. You can have variable here. The value of the variable must be an integer, or you can have an expression and that expression must evaluate to an integer. Okay. Now what are these break statements for? Break statement is to come out of your switch statement. This whole switch block to come out of it. So how it works is this. In the switch statement you have a integer value. Now it will go case by case. If C1 does not match with C2, then these statements will not be executed. And after checking this case, now case 2 will be checked. This case will be checked. If C2 matches with X, then these statements will be executed. And if there was no break statement, then all those statements following from case 2 will be executed. So this break is to only execute the case 2 statements. So if you have something like this, switch X case C1 break and case C2 and you don't have break here, case C3 you don't have break here also, and let's say case C4 and here you have break and then default, like here there was default and here is also default. No need to write break because I am writing default at the end. So if this is what your switch statement is, then if C1 matches with X, then these statements will be executed that belongs to case C1 and because of this break it will come out of your switch statement and the flow will come out of your switch statement. But let's say if C3 matches, let's say C1 does not match with X, C2 does not match with X, but C3 matches with X. Now all these statements of all the cases will be executed, not all. As you can see, C4 has a break. So if C3 matches, then C3 will be executed. The statements under the C3 will be executed. For C4 will be executed, but then it encounters a break, so it will come out of your switch statement, and the default statements will not be executed. Okay. And when it comes to default, it just happens that in both these examples, I have written default in the end, but it can be written at any place. You can have case A, case Z, case 6. You can have like this. A character or a short in an expression will be interpreted as an integer. So this works. Okay. Thank you very much.